Now, is it time for Brussels to get real over a Brexit trade deal? Hans-Olaf Henkel is a German MEP and former president of the Federation of German Industries, the BDI, which represents 37 German industry associations and reportedly over 100,000 businesses. And Hans, let's just talk in terms of Brexit. The news we've had coming out, particularly in the past few weeks, so we've had the transition period, particularly Michel Barnier saying there's not much progress has happened with regards to the key issues there, but also we've had the draft withdrawal agreement today about the ECJ and the customs arrangement. Again, some serious problems and divisions and discussions that need to happen there. Where do you see these Brexit negotiations as sitting at the moment? Are we currently in a state of deadlock where not much is moving and there's no momentum driving anything forward?
Well, I think it is now becoming very obvious that Brexit is going to be a lose-lose situation for both, not only for Britain, but also for the European Union. Unfortunately, Monsieur Barnier hasn't got the message yet. I think he believes that it is sort of a British decision and therefore a British problem. He ignores two things. Number one, the contribution of the Brussels people for the Brexit in the first place, because they are to blame as well. They had done all the centralization and bureaucracy which made the British doubting on the project. And the second thing which he ignores is the detrimental impact Brexit has on the European Union itself.
And when you say the detrimental impact, is that in monetary terms simply in crude sense the budget contribution, what, 11-12 billion pounds or euros, which are going to be lost to the EU budget, or is there something more tangible than that for you?
No, that it would be okay if it would be only the net contribution of Britain. Britain has been the second largest contributor, despite the Thatcher rebate. Germany has been the biggest. No, I am concerned about many other things. Let's face it. Britain leaving means economically the same thing as if 19 other countries in the EU would leave at the same time. This is a colossal impact on the common market. The common market is in the future not as efficient and as big as it used before. Number one. Number two, totally ignored by Mr. Barnier and maybe by the British. To have a trade deal with a new country, like let's say with South Korea or with Canada or with Japan, is one thing. But to disentangle the relationships which have grown over 40 years with thousands and tens and thousands of small and medium-sized and large companies between Britain and the EU is quite another. There are logistical chains. There are relationships between customers and suppliers. All these are being damaged if we get a deal like Mr. Barnier wants. I'm of the opinion we should treat the British as if they never left.
And one thing which is certainly, in terms of the free trade agreement, the agreement post-Brexit, is this idea of the alignment. You know, how much is the UK going to align to the EU so to minimise any trade barriers which are going to be brought up after March 2019? Now, the British are obviously proposing what has been called in the UK as the three baskets case, which means that the UK government will be able to choose the extent to which it will align with the EU, depending on the industry and the sector, and that depends on obviously the economy and what's best for the UK. That's obviously, in terms of an EU sense, what's come through from the Commission and the Council. That's seen as cherry picking. The UK government is cherry picking and trying to effectively get access to the benefits without being party to the regulations and the rules. Do you see that as a case of the UK being unrealistic with regards to cherry picking, or do you see this as an ideological restraint from the EU which needs to be changed?
It is clearly the latter. It's clear for me that Mr. Barnier wants to achieve one thing. He wants to demonstrate that it is disadvantageous for a EU country to leave the European Union. So that's his prime objective. He wants to punish. I think this is totally wrong, because he doesn't punish only the British, he punishes the Europeans. And I think it's about time the Europeans come to the rescue of, if you wish, David Davis. Because what is good for British industry is automatically also good for European industry. I wonder how many people know that after Britain leaves the European Union, Britain becomes the largest single customer of the European Union. It's not China, it's not the United States, it's going to be Britain.
And you obviously still maintain good relationship with a number of German businesses and industry. You know what they're feeling, what they're thinking. In terms of where this is moving and the momentum and the concerns, what's the feeling in Germany, obviously the powerhouse of the European Union, with regards to Brexit? In terms
listen,
of the
I have not met not one German who doesn't regret Brexit. All, without exception, business people I now know quite a few, detest the idea of Britain leaving the European Union.
Do they see the idea of the alignment, the three baskets options, or UK being able to choose a rather bespoke arrangement where they choose how to align with the EU depending on the sector? Do they see that as the most practical way forwards? Are they in agreement with the UK rather than the EU on that?
Well, look, most of the German business people are like the British business people. They care for their business and do not like to criticize the government. In the case of German government, let's face it, we didn't have one for the last couple of months. And number two, if you ask the government, they will always say, well, we leave it to Mr. Barnier. So the arrangement of the 27 remaining countries is to delegate this to Barnier, and that's the big mistake. Because what they overlook is that Barnier has only one thing, or two, he wants two objectives. One is he wants to punish Britain so no other country gets this crazy idea. And number two, he wants to get rid of the British. That is obvious to me too. And you should know that together with other 6 eminent German business personalities, amongst them 2 other ex-presidents of the German BDI, which is the equivalent of your CBI, we have formed a group, and it is calling for a new deal for Britain. And the objective is to ask the European Union to offer Britain a new deal. More autonomy, for instance, over its own immigration, with the objective that the British finally stay in the European Union. Because for me, Britain departing the European Union is the biggest disaster ever happening to the European Union in the last few decades.
I just want to read a quote that you've been reported in the UK press, is that, Theresa May's Brexit means Brexit is as wrong as Corbyn's customs union ideas. How clueless, or rather, how clued up do you think the UK political parties, UK leaders are in terms of the European Union, in terms of actually working out the mechanics of a future arrangement with the EU?
Well, I have had a number of discussions with Remainers like Nick Clegg, with the hardcore Brexiteers like John Redwood, and I'm quite aware of what's happening in the UK. I have a hunch that at the end, when the deal gets to the Parliament, and it has to go to the Parliament, it is so unsatisfactory for both, for Remainers and for Brexiteers, that perhaps at the end, the people in the Parliament will say, look, this deal is so controversial, we ought to ask our public one more time whether they want that deal. And if that happens, at that moment, I work on it, the European Union should come on the stage and say, look, we made a mistake by not giving David Cameron some more autonomy on its immigration. We admit we made a mistake, because now, meanwhile, many other countries think the same. We now give it to him. And maybe this is sort of a face-saving way out for the British to stay in the European Union.
Hans-Olaf Henkel, thank you very much.
You're welcome.